I had a good marriage. At least that's what I told myself every morning while I knotted my tie in the bathroom mirror.
My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 58 years old. I teach American history at a high school in Naperville, Illinois, 30 miles outside of Chicago. I coach Little League in the spring. I go to church on Sundays. I mow my lawn on Saturdays, even when my knees ache. I am, by every measurable standard, a boring man. And boring men do not end up sitting in a parked car at 2 a.m., staring at their phone, feeling the entire architecture of their life collapse in real time. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where it actually began. 16 years ago, my first wife, Carol, was murdered on a Tuesday night in October. I was at a school board meeting. My daughter Lily was at her grandmother's house. Carol was home alone. A 19-year-old named Ryan Voss broke in through the kitchen window, looking for cash and prescription pills. Carol heard him. She came downstairs, and Ryan Voss beat her to death with a fireplace poker. I found her when I got home at 9:47 p.m. I don't talk about what I saw. I won't talk about it now. What I will tell you is that I sat on that kitchen floor with my wife in my arms until the paramedics physically pulled me away. And I remember the exact moment I understood that some kinds of pain don't heal. They just get buried under the weight of daily living until something digs them back up. Ryan Voss was arrested 4 days later, convicted 18 months after that. Life sentence, no parole. The judge looked him in the eye and said justice had been served. I sat in that courtroom and felt absolutely nothing, because Carol was still gone. Justice is just a word they use when they can't give you back what you lost. I raised Lily alone for 4 years. It was hard, in ways I still don't have language for. Then I met Diane Holloway, a nurse. She was 45 when we met. I was 52. She had warm brown eyes and a laugh that filled a room. She brought casseroles to sick neighbors and remembered everyone's birthday. She was patient with Lily in a way that made me believe in second chances. We dated for 2 years. We got married in a small ceremony at a garden venue in Lyle. Lily cried happy tears. I cried happy tears. That was 6 years ago. For a long time, it was good. Really good. Diane was steady. She was kind. She made the house feel like a home again, instead of a museum where I stored my grief. And then, slowly, she wasn't. I noticed it first in small things. The way she'd go quiet at dinner for no reason. The way she started sleeping with her phone face down on the nightstand. She started going to bed earlier, waking up later, and somewhere in between, she stopped reaching for my hand. I told myself it was stress. She worked long shifts at the hospital. I told myself it was hormones. I told myself it was the weather, the season, just a rough patch. I told myself every comfortable lie a man tells himself when he doesn't want to know the truth. But then came the Tuesday nights. Every Tuesday, like clockwork, Diane would tell me she had a continuing education class at a medical facility in Aurora. She'd leave at 5 p.m. and come back around 9. I never questioned it. She was a nurse. Nurses took continuing education courses. It made complete sense. Till the night I ran into Dr. Patricia Waugh at the grocery store. Patricia worked at the same hospital as Diane. We chatted for a few minutes in the cereal aisle, the polite small talk of two people who only know each other through association. And then, almost as an afterthought, she said, "Tell Diane, I hope she's feeling better. She's missed so many Tuesday sessions, the coordinators were asking about her." I stood there, holding a box of oatmeal. "She's missed sessions?" I said. Patricia blinked. "Oh, for the last couple of months at least. I just assumed she was dealing with something personal. She didn't mention it?" I smiled. I told her I must have gotten confused. I told her I'd pass along the message. I drove home in complete silence. I didn't say anything to Diane that night. I watched her move around the kitchen. I watched her laugh at something on the television. I watched her kiss me on the cheek before she went to bed. And the entire time, one thought was running on a loop in the back of my mind. She's been lying to me. Every Tuesday, for God knows how long, she's been lying to my face, and I've been smiling and waving goodbye like a fool. A man my age has a particular kind of pride. It's not arrogance. It's the quiet dignity that comes from having survived hard things. And the idea that my wife, the woman I let into my life, into my daughter's life, was sneaking around behind my back, doing God with God knows who. I called a private investigator the next morning. His name was Glenn Purcell. He came highly recommended by a retired police officer I knew from church. Ex-Chicago PD. Quiet man. Professional. I told him I thought my wife might be having an affair. I gave him her license plate number, her photo, her Tuesday routine. I told him I needed to know. Glenn took the case without judgment. He just said, "Give me 2 weeks." Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I went to work, I taught my classes, I talked about the Civil War and Reconstruction, and the moral failures of history. I wasn't living inside my own quiet catastrophe. I came home and ate dinner with Diane, and asked about her day, and listened to her answer, and hated myself for not being able to tell what was real anymore. She was still attentive. She made my coffee every morning exactly the way I liked it. 2 sugars, a splash of cream. She rubbed my shoulders when I said my neck hurt. She was the perfect wife, and that made it so much worse. Because either she was innocent, and I was a paranoid man who had hired someone to spy on his wife, or she was a liar who was very, very good at it. The call came on a Thursday night, 11 days into the investigation, 2:14 a.m. I was in bed, but wide awake, staring at the ceiling. I grabbed the phone before the second ring. Glenn's voice was quiet, controlled, but there was something underneath it I couldn't identify at first. I would later recognize it as discomfort, like a man who didn't want to say what he was about to say. "Mr. Mercer, I need you to listen carefully." I sat up. Diane shifted beside me. I walked to the hallway, eased the bedroom door shut behind me. "Tell me," I said. "Your wife isn't having an affair," he said. I exhaled, and for about 3 seconds, I felt relief. Then, he kept talking. "She's been making weekly visits to Stateville Correctional Center in Joliet. Every Tuesday, for at least the past 6 months. She signs in. She spends approximately 40 to 45 minutes inside, and she leaves." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I pulled the visitor logs through a contact I have. Her name is on them consistently. He paused. "Mr. Mercer, I need to ask you something. Does your wife know anyone who's incarcerated at Stateville?" "No," I said. The word came out flat. "She doesn't know anyone in prison." Silence. Then he said, "The inmate she's been visiting is named Ryan Voss." The floor moved. I swear to God, the floor actually moved beneath my feet. "Say that again," I whispered. He said it again. I don't remember ending the call. I don't remember walking back down the hallway. I remember standing in the living room in the dark, in my socks, looking at the bedroom door. On the other side of that door, Diane was sleeping. The woman who made my coffee. The woman who held my daughter when she cried. The woman who sat beside me at Carol's grave on the anniversary every single year and held my hand. She had been sitting across a table from the man who murdered my wife. Every Tuesday, for 6 months. And she had never said a word. I grabbed my keys off the counter. I didn't go anywhere that night. I sat in my car in the garage for 3 hours, with the engine off, keys in my hand, staring at the concrete wall in front of me. Where was I going to go at 2 a.m.? What was I going to do? Drive to Joliet and bang on the prison gates? Demand answers from a man locked behind steel doors and razor wire? No, I needed to think. I needed to be smart about this. The sun came up around 6:30. November in Illinois. cold light through the garage window. I heard the kitchen door open behind me. Footsteps. Diane appeared at the driver's side window. She was wearing her blue robe, the one I bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. Her hair was messy from sleep. She looked concerned. She looked innocent. "Danny, what are you doing out here?" I turned my head slowly and looked at her face. This woman I had shared a bed with for 6 years. This woman I had trusted with my broken heart. I searched her eyes for something. Guilt, fear, anything that would confirm what I now knew. Nothing, just worry lines around soft brown eyes. "Couldn't sleep," I said. My voice sounded foreign to me, flat. "Came out here to think." "About what?" I almost laughed. Almost. "Nothing important," I said. "Just school stuff. Budget cuts. You know how it is." She rubbed my shoulder through the open window. Her hand was warm. It made my skin crawl. "Come inside, baby. I'll make breakfast." I followed her into the house. I sat at the kitchen table. I watched her crack eggs into a pan. I watched her hum a little song under her breath. And I made a decision right there, watching her flip an omelet like nothing in the world was wrong. I was not going to confront her. Not yet. Confrontation would give her a chance to lie, to spin, to explain. And I already knew she was good at lying. 6 months of Tuesday visits. 6 months of looking me in the face and talking about continuing education classes that never existed. She was a professional. No, I needed to understand what I was dealing with first. I needed to know the why before I could figure out the what. I called in sick to work for the first time in 11 years. Diane left for her shift at 7:45. I kissed her goodbye at the door. She told me to feel better. She told me to drink plenty of fluids. She told me she loved me. The moment her car disappeared around the corner, I started searching. I went through her nightstand first. Nothing unusual. Chapstick, reading glasses, a romance novel with a shirtless man on the cover. I checked under the mattress. Nothing. I checked the closet, the bathroom cabinets, the boxes in the back of her closet that she said contained old photographs from her first marriage. Those boxes were empty. I felt a cold sensation spread through my chest. I moved to her desk in the spare bedroom. She called it her meditation room. She spent time in there alone, sometimes for hours. I never questioned it. I thought she was journaling, praying, processing stress from the hospital. The desk was locked. I went to the garage and got a flathead screwdriver. I forced the drawer open. I didn't care anymore about being subtle. Inside, I found a manila folder, thick, heavy. I pulled it out and set it on the desk. The first page was a photograph, Ryan Voss. His mugshot from 16 years ago. 19 years old, acne scars on his cheeks, dead eyes staring at the camera. The man who took everything from me. The man whose face I saw every time I closed my eyes for 3 years straight. I turned the page. Court documents, transcripts from his trial, witness statements, evidence logs, details about the crime scene, details I had spent 16 years trying to forget. I turned another page. Letters, dozens of them, handwritten letters from Ryan Voss to Diane. The oldest one was dated 2 years ago. Before we were married? No, just after, 6 months after our wedding. I picked up the first letter. My hands were shaking. "Diane," it began, "thank you for reaching out. I wasn't sure anyone from that life would ever contact me again. I know what I did was unforgivable. I know I destroyed everything. But hearing from you after all these years gives me something I haven't felt in a long time. Hope. From that life." I read the words again. From that life. My mind was spinning. What life? How did Diane know Ryan Voss? She had never mentioned knowing anyone connected to the case. She had never mentioned knowing anything about my first wife's murder beyond what I told her. I kept reading. The letters got longer, more personal. Ryan talked about his childhood, his addiction, his regrets. He talked about someone named Aunt Linda, who used to make him pancakes on Sunday mornings. He talked about his mother dying when he was 12. He talked about a cousin who used to visit him when he was younger. A cousin named Diane. The room tilted. I had to read it 3 times before the words made sense. But there it was, clear as day. Ryan Voss mentioned growing up with his cousin Diane in Rockford. He mentioned holidays together, birthday parties. He mentioned how she was the only family member who hadn't abandoned him completely after his conviction. My wife was Ryan Voss's cousin. She knew exactly who he was when she met me. She knew exactly what he had done, and she married me anyway. I stood up from the desk. I walked to the bathroom. I vomited until there was nothing left. The questions came fast and brutal. Did she target me? Was any of it real? Did she love me at all? Or was I just a means to an end? What was the end? What did she want? I found more answers in the bottom of the drawer. Legal documents. Appeals paperwork. A letter from an attorney named Kenneth Braddock, based in Springfield, outlining a strategy to reopen Ryan Voss's case based on new evidence of investigative misconduct. Attached to the letter was a receipt. Diane had paid this attorney a $15,000 retainer. $15,000. Our money. My money I had saved over years of teaching and summer tutoring and coaching Little League for a stipend that barely covered gas. She was using my income to fund an appeal for the man who murdered my wife. I sat on the floor of that room for a long time. I don't know how long. The light changed outside the window. My phone buzzed with messages I didn't read. I just sat there, holding those documents, feeling something inside me harden into a shape I didn't recognize. I thought about Carol. I thought about her laugh, the way she sang in the shower, the way she used to leave little notes in my lunchbox when I started teaching. I thought about finding her on that kitchen floor. I thought about her funeral. I thought about Lily asking me, at 8 years old, why God took her mommy away. And then I thought about Diane, visiting Ryan, bringing him money, touching the glass between them, crying for him, working to set him free, while sleeping next to me every single night. Something fundamental broke inside me that afternoon, but something else took its place. Something cold, something patient, something that had been sleeping for 16 years and was now very awake. I put the documents back in the drawer. I closed it as best I could. I cleaned up any evidence that I had searched the room. I showered. I shaved. I put on fresh clothes. When Diane came home that evening, I was sitting on the couch watching television. I smiled when she walked in. I asked about her day. I listened to her talk about a difficult patient and nodded in all the right places. She had no idea. Over the next 3 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize. I was calm on the surface, loving, even. I brought Diane flowers. I took her to dinner at her favorite Italian place in Wheaton. I held her hand across the table and told her how grateful I was that she came into my life. Underneath, I was planning. Glenn Purcell became my closest ally. I paid him to dig deeper. I wanted to know everything. Every visit Diane made, every dollar she moved, every conversation she had with Kenneth Braddock. Glenn delivered weekly reports, photographs, recordings, a timeline that stretched back further than I ever imagined. Diane had researched me before we met. She knew where I worked. She knew about my grief support group. She engineered our first meeting at a coffee shop near the school, pretending it was chance. She had been playing a role from the very first hello. Everything was a lie. But the most disturbing discovery came 5 weeks into my investigation. Glenn called me on a Tuesday afternoon. His voice was different, tighter. "Mr. Mercer, I need you to sit down." I was already sitting, but I gripped the armrest of my chair. "What is it?" "I got access to some of the conversations between your wife and Voss during the prison visits. My contact inside managed to record portions of 3 separate sessions, and he exhaled slowly. Voss is claiming he has information that could change everything about his case. He says he didn't act alone the night your wife was killed. He says there was someone else there, someone who told him which house to hit, someone who knew your schedule, someone who wanted Carol Mercer dead. The room went silent. Even my heartbeat seemed to stop. Who? I whispered. Glenn paused for a long moment. He didn't say a name, but he told Diane he would reveal everything once the appeal goes through. He said it's his leverage, his insurance policy. I couldn't breathe. Carol's death wasn't random. Someone planned it, and Ryan Voss knew who. I spent the next 2 weeks living inside a nightmare that looked exactly like normal life. I woke up beside Diane. I made coffee. I drove to school and taught teenagers about the causes of World War I. I came home and ate dinner and watched television and went to bed. I did all the things a normal husband does. But I was not a normal husband anymore. I was a man hunting for the truth about his first wife's murder while sleeping next to a woman who might have helped orchestrate it. The question haunted me every single moment. Who wanted Carol dead? Who knew my schedule well enough to know I would be at that school board meeting? Who benefited from her being gone? I made a list in my head. I went through it obsessively. Old colleagues, distant relatives, former students with grudges. Nothing made sense. Carol was a kindergarten teacher. She volunteered at the food pantry on weekends. She didn't have enemies. She had thank you cards from parents and drawings from 5-year-olds taped to our refrigerator. Nobody wanted Carol dead, except somebody did. Glenn continued his surveillance. I continued my performance at home. And slowly, a plan began to take shape in my mind. A plan that required patience, precision, and access to Ryan Voss himself. I couldn't visit him directly. My name would flag immediately in the system. The husband of his victim showing up at Stateville would raise every red flag imaginable. But there was another way. Kenneth Braddock, the attorney. I drove to Springfield on a Saturday when Diane thought I was at a teaching conference in Bloomington. Braddock's office was in a converted Victorian house near the state capitol. Cheap furniture, water stains on the ceiling. The kind of place where desperate people brought desperate cases. I walked in wearing a suit I bought specifically for this meeting. I told the receptionist I was interested in hiring Mr. Braddock for an appeal case. A wrongful conviction. My brother, serving 20 years for armed robbery he didn't commit. Braddock saw me within the hour. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, slick hair, eager eyes. The kind of lawyer who advertised on bus stop benches and took cases nobody else would touch because he needed the money. I sat across from him and lied through my teeth for 30 minutes. I asked about his process, his success rate, his strategies for overturning convictions. He talked freely. He wanted my business. Then I steered the conversation. I heard you're working on a big case right now, I said casually. Something involving an old murder conviction. Ryan Voss? Braddock's expression flickered, just for a moment. Surprise. Suspicion. Then he smoothed it over with a professional smile. I can't discuss other clients, Mr. Henderson, I said. The fake name came easily. Of course, I understand. I just heard through the grapevine that there might be new evidence in that case. Misconduct. Maybe even another person involved in the crime who was never caught. Braddock leaned back in his chair. He studied me for a long moment. Where exactly did you hear that? I shrugged. People talk, especially people with connections to the prison system. My brother knows a lot of inmates. Information travels. He was quiet, thinking, calculating. Mr. Henderson, he said finally, I don't know who you really are, but I'm going to give you some free legal advice. Stay away from the Voss case. There are people involved who don't appreciate curiosity, and the information that man is sitting on could destroy lives. He stood up. The meeting was over. I drove back to Naperville with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Braddock knew something big enough to make him nervous. Something he didn't want to touch without protection. Ryan Voss wasn't just a drug addict who broke into the wrong house. He was holding leverage over someone powerful enough to scare a lawyer who made his living poking at the justice system. I needed to talk to Voss directly, and I finally figured out how. Lily. My daughter was 24 now, living in Chicago, working as a paralegal at a downtown firm. She had her mother's eyes, and her mother's stubborn streak. She also had access to resources I didn't. Legal databases, case files, and most importantly, she had a right to face the man who killed her mother. I called her on a Wednesday evening. "Dad, is everything okay?" My voice caught in my throat. I hadn't told her anything about Diane. I hadn't wanted to burden her with my suspicions until I had proof. But now, I needed her help. "Sweetheart, I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay calm." The silence on the other end told me she was already not calm. I told her everything: the private investigator, the prison visits, the letters, the money, the family connection between Diane and Ryan Voss, the recordings suggesting someone else was involved in her mother's murder. When I finished, Lily didn't speak for almost a full minute. Then she said 5 words that changed everything. "I know who it was." I stopped breathing. "What?" "Dad, I need you to come to Chicago. Tonight. There's something I found years ago that I never told you about. I didn't understand it at the time, but now it makes sense." I drove to Chicago in silence. No radio, no phone calls. Just the hum of the highway and the pounding of my heart. Lily's apartment was small but neat. She had wine waiting. She looked like she had been crying. She handed me a photograph. It was old, faded, taken at what looked like a company Christmas party. I recognized the logo in the background. Morrison Financial, the investment firm where Carol worked part-time as an administrative assistant during the year before she died. In the photograph, Carol was smiling. She was standing next to a man in an expensive suit. His arm was around her waist. Too familiar, too close. "Who is this?" I asked, but something in my stomach already knew. "His name is Gregory Ashworth," Lily said quietly. "He was the CEO of Morrison Financial. He left the company 6 months after Mom died, moved to Arizona, built a real estate empire. He's worth about $40 million now." I stared at the photograph. "Dad, I found this in Mom's things when I was 16. In a box in the attic. There were other photos too, and letters, love letters." The room spun. Mom was having an affair? Lily nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I think she was trying to end it. I think she threatened to tell his wife. And I think she couldn't finish. I finished for her. He had her killed." Everything snapped into place with horrifying clarity. Gregory Ashworth, a wealthy man with everything to lose. A wife, a reputation, a career. Carol threatening to expose their affair. Ryan Voss, a desperate addict who would do anything for drug money. The perfect patsy, the perfect fall guy. And now, 16 years later, Voss was trying to leverage that information to get out of prison. Diane was funding his appeal. And somewhere in Arizona, Gregory Ashworth was living a life built on my wife's corpse. The cold thing inside me crystallized into something sharp and clear. I flew to Phoenix 3 days later. Gregory Ashworth lived in a gated community in Scottsdale. Massive house, pool, tennis court, 3 luxury cars in the driveway. He was 67 years old now, retired, spending his blood money on golf and grandchildren. I didn't confront him directly. That would be stupid. That would give him a chance to lawyer up, to destroy evidence, to run. Instead, I did something better. I contacted a journalist named Rebecca Thornton at the Arizona Republic, investigative reporter, Pulitzer nominee. She specialized in cold cases and corporate corruption. I gave her everything. The photographs, the letters between Carol and Ashworth, the prison recordings Glenn had obtained, the financial records showing payments from an offshore account to an address in Rockford, Illinois, 6 months before Carol's murder, payments that stopped the week after Ryan Voss was arrested. I gave her Diane's name, Braddock's name, every piece of the puzzle I had spent months collecting. Then I went home and waited. The story broke on a Sunday morning. Gregory Ashworth was arrested Tuesday afternoon. Conspiracy to commit murder. He denied everything. His lawyers promised a vigorous defense. It didn't matter. The evidence was overwhelming. Voss had kept records. Insurance. Just like he said. Diane was arrested the same day. Accessory after the fact. Obstruction of justice. Fraud. She called me from the police station, crying, begging me to help her. I hung up. The trial took 8 months. I attended every single day. I sat in the front row with Lily beside me. I watched Gregory Ashworth's face when the verdict came in. Guilty, first-degree murder. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt something quieter, something that had been waiting 16 years to finally exhale. Carol deserved the truth. She finally got it. Diane received 12 years. She'll be 70 when she gets out. I filed for divorce the day after her sentencing. I never spoke to her again. Ryan Voss got his sentence reduced for cooperating. He'll be eligible for parole in 6 years. I don't care anymore. He was a weapon. Ashworth was the hand that pulled the trigger. Last month, I visited Carol's grave for the first time since all of this ended. I brought flowers, yellow roses, her favorites. I sat there for a long time. I told her I was sorry it took so long. I told her Lily was doing well. I told her I finally understood what happened that night. And then I said goodbye. Not forever, just for now. Because I'm not the same man who found her on that kitchen floor 16 years ago. I'm not the same man who married a stranger and trusted blindly because I was desperate to feel whole again. I'm someone new now, someone forged in fire and betrayal, and the long, slow burn of justice delayed. I stood up from that grave on a cold December morning. Snow was falling, light and soft, the kind Carol always loved. I walked back to my car. I drove home. I made coffee. I sat at my kitchen table and watched the sun rise over Naperville. And for the first time in 16 years, I felt something I thought I had lost forever. Peace.